Hello, everyone. I am not doing a show. Obviously, as you can see, there is no box in there with my face. Um, but what I am going to do is I am going to play for you Jim's show from Wednesday. He put one out and it flew right under my radar. So um, I want to get that live streamed and get that up on the YouTubes and the Twitters. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jim Cooper.
Hey everyone, Jim here. Hope you're all having a really great week. Um, it's not been the best couple of weeks. Hope you're all having a really great week. Um, it's not been the best couple of weeks for myself, but hopefully things are better with you. A lot of stuff going on, just not just in my personal life, but with in the world. It seems like it's been a long time since we last spoke, and it really hasn't. I mean, I feel like I'm coming back after a month or two of being gone, but I was just here last week, so I don't know. It seems like a lot has happened. The main thing, there's a couple of big issues that I wanted to talk about, and one of the things that I don't really want to spend much time on, but usually when I say that, I end up spending a lot of time on it, is the slap heard around the world at the Oscars. Now, first, I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's not media is making a big deal about it, and it's not really that big of an issue. It doesn't affect any of us. But the truth is, if the media wasn't talking about that slap, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, then I honestly wouldn't have even known if the Oscars had happened because it is so irrelevant to my life. There was a time when I was much younger, back when we only had the three TV stations, and I think it was in 1987, when Fox came out. But even then, you only had the four. I mean, I'm not counting like PBS and all that because once I outgrew Sesame Street, I never watched PBS until uh, I became more of a scholar. But even now, I don't watch PBS very often. Every once in a while, they do a special that I like, and I'll tune in. Uh, but they have a decidedly liberal slant. I mean, they're not, except for like science shows, they're not completely liberal like when they do biographies, but um, but there is a slight liberal slant. But I really like their biographies. They have a presidential series that they do, and they're relatively fair to the Republican presidents. They did one on George W. Bush. They did one on Ronald Reagan. Um, they're relatively fair, but still. So my mom, I think I don't remember my dad ever sitting down to watch. I mean, he may have sat in the room because we only had the one TV back then. But my mom would watch the Oscars, and I would sit there and watch them with her. And so I at one time did watch them. I never found them that extremely entertaining. It was just that lots of times they had actors um, I admired. Back then they did. There were a lot of them that were still alive. And so it'd be kind of fun to see actors that I had seen over the years appearing. Like when I was young, you'd see people that are long deceased now. Johnny Carson would host it many times, and you'd have like Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra, and maybe Dean Martin would make an appearance. You'd have Lucille Ball and Cary Grant, and Katharine Hepburn, and a lot of these old Hollywood stars that I had seen. And it was just kind of neat. Now of course they're all gone, but that's mostly the only reason I watched it was just because my parents watched it. We had the one TV, and my mom was watching it, and so uh, you know, sometimes I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there were times I didn't watch it. Like I might have found something else to do, but I do remember watching it. But I don't watch it anymore for a whole host of reasons. But Um, I might get into it in a second, but about the slap. I mean, I don't really have a dog in this fight because I don't really like any of them. I mean, I've never been a big fan of Will Smith. I mean, he's made a couple of good movies, but I really wasn't a huge fan of his show Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I wasn't a huge fan of his rap career when he first started. Um, what was that? What was his? Was it like Jay? Uh, I don't remember. It was like, I don't know. The Fresh Prince was his name. Um, seems like it was like something like DJ Jazzy Jeff or something in the Fresh Prince. I can't remember. I'm probably butchering it, but and they had songs like I think I could beat Mike Tyson and I don't know another one that was real popular. I can't remember. It was kind of disrespectful to parents. I remember that because I remember my parents weren't happy with it. They were two big hits, and I heard them a lot on the radio. I never owned any of his music, and I don't know. I've always found it to be kind of condescending and arrogant and everything like that. So I'm not supporting Will Smith in this, but on the other hand, I believe most people in Hollywood deserve a good slap in the face, if not just to maybe knock some sense into them. But in that sense, I think Will Smith should have gone farther. He should have just pulled a Rambo and smacked everyone in the audience. Um, you know, just just on principle alone. But I don't think it does certainly doesn't warrant this amount of attention that it's getting. The thing is, the Oscars start out. Here I go. Sorry about that. But I have to say it. The Oscars started out like trying to think of what a good example would be. A little like the Employee of the Month, but obviously this is yearly. I'd say it starts out like in high school, and those of you who went to public school, I don't know if you went to if you go to a Christian school if they do this, and obviously they don't do it if you're homeschooled. I mean, but every year in the yearbook they would have these faux awards that they'd hand out like at the prom or some activity, like best eyes, nicest personality, you know, um, uh, you know, most likely to be successful, and then you'd have the joke ones like most likely to wind up in prison or stuff like that. They were just kind of fun awards that nobody would care about. The Grand Haven Tribune wouldn't print who won best eyes at Grand Haven High School. It was just something that we did for fun. It was just kind of a fun ceremonial thing that I don't even remember what you got if you won. It was some kind of gag gift. It wasn't anything that would be sitting on your wall, like, 20 years later, like, and you put it on your resume. I won Best Eyes in 1993. Uh, you know, it was just kind of a gag thing that we did at prom. It wasn't taken too seriously. You know, I mean, it was an honor if you got something nice like Best Eyes. I mean, or cutest personality or best looking or something. I mean, sure, I would have loved to have won something like that, or even smartest kid in class or something. But I wasn't dying to win. I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't trying to get people to vote for me. It was just something fun, and that's kind of what the Oscars were, or the so-called Academy Awards, when they first started. It was just a group of actors and writers and directors who got together and had a party, and they would hand out these awards. Best picture of the year. You were the best actor of all of us. We think you did the best job. I mean, they weren't non-serious. I'm not saying they were just jokes, but you know, I mean, they weren't in poor taste. But the idea is, it's just mostly being recognized by your peers that they say, "Man, you did an outstanding job on that in that movie. I mean, we're really envious of you. That was great work." Or your cinematography, man, that was amazing. Or that picture, that movie that came out, I was blown away. I want to give that some awards because that was amazing. You know, um, it was just being recognized by your peers, and it was just an excuse to have a party. And many of the early Oscars, uh, I don't know what years they were, but I remember hearing about them. I mean, the Oscar itself is not worth very much. I mean, it's not meant to be. It's not made out of gold. It's gold plated, but it's not. I don't even think it's real gold. I think it's just painted gold. It's not worth anything. And at one time, early on, the Oscars were just made out of wood. They were just wooden carvings that they had some guy make, and they'd paint them gold. They weren't. They're not works of art. They're not worth anything. The idea is that, it's like I say, at a retirement party or something, you get a watch, or for 25 years of service, you get a watch. And okay, you might get a plaque or something. It's not really worth anything. I remember I worked at the Star Theater in Holland, and I won Employee of the Month, and they gave me this ridiculous cow, this porcelain cow or something, kitschy kind of item that your grandmother might have in her kitchen. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I mean, but the idea was not that they were going to give me some prize that was worth a tremendous amount of money, or they're going to give me a bunch of money. It was just the honor of that they thought I was the best employee of the month, and that's where the real honor was, not in any gift. And that's how the Oscars were. I mean, they were private ceremonies where they would just have these things. And then when the newsreels started coming out, if you guys remember the newsreels, they were back before television, many times before a movie. When you went to see it, they would have newsreels where they would tell about the news. I don't know how often they changed them, but they would have highlights of the news, what's going on in the world. They would usually have a segment about something the president said, because they did have radio, but this was a chance that you could see Harry Truman actually speak instead of just hearing his voice, or FDR, or and they would have some silly segments like a cat who plays ping pong or something, but but they would sometimes during the award season, they might show us a snippet, like Clark Gable wins best actor for Gone with the Wind, and and this is what he had to say in his acceptance speech, and they'll show him a little snippet, and then and then favorite female actress was Marilyn Monroe, and here's what she said when she won her award for this movie, and so when television came along, and there's only the 3 stations, it was actually kind of a novelty when they aired them, because you always had to pay for the privilege. If you wanted to see John Wayne, you couldn't see him every week for free in your house. You had to pay money. You had to pay for the privilege to go see John Wayne. You had to go somewhere. You had to dress up, dress into other than your PJs or whatever you wear around the house. You're going out in public. You're paying money, and you get to watch John Wayne on a big screen, or Marilyn Monroe, or Katharine Hepburn, or Cary Grant, or back in the old days, Charlie Chaplin, whoever. So it was a real treat when you tuned on, and there's the red carpet, and here are all your favorite celebrities, walking the red carpet all together in one room. They're showing shots of the audience, and you're picking up people. There's that person. There's that person. Oh, look, I recognize him. Oh yeah, it's exciting. You get to see all of your favorite stars, hundreds of them, all in one place, presenting, accepting awards, just in the audience. It was a novelty. It was kind of fun, and people would tune in. But now, number one, the novelty's worn off long ago when they started making them to be relevant and political. They started using it as promotional, like to promote a cause. So, and then also we have so much more entertainment now that really an award show is pretty boring, and you'd put up with it back in the old days when you didn't have a whole lot of entertainment. When I was a kid, I mean, we had a lot more entertainment than my parents did when they were kids. But when I was a kid, we still didn't. We didn't. Computers were not in the home, so we didn't have a lot of computer games. We didn't have computer games. We had video games, but again, since we didn't have computers in the home, we didn't have video games in the home. If I wanted to go play Pac-Man, or or any of these of my favorite arcade games, I had to go to an arcade. I'd have to go out, and I'd have to pay money. Here's 25 cents to play Pac-Man. Here's So we didn't have a ton of entertainment in my home. We didn't, when I was a kid, VCRs had just come out, and they were very expensive. So we didn't have a VCR. So, you couldn't just watch a movie anytime. You had to wait for a movie to come out on television, which sometimes took a long time. Now, there were some movies that were put on VHS, and you could watch them on VCRs. But most of us didn't have that. There were no streaming services. There was no. I think cable was around, but my parents couldn't afford cable. Cable was pretty expensive back then. And same thing for a satellite dish. All right. Had to step off there. It looked like my computer froze up for a second. I don't know if it did or not. But anyway, seems to be working for the moment. But so you'd have to go to the arcade or whatever. So there wasn't a lot of entertainment in your home. So, if you went, so if the Oscars came on, they weren't the most exciting things, but you could sit there and watch it, because you didn't have anything else to do or to watch. But nowadays, the Oscar award shows in general are just really slow moving. Just by nature, they're slow moving because, you know, well, I mean, I guess they don't have to be. I suppose you could just come out and have 15 minutes of, you know, no speeches, just, hey, this person won Best Picture or Best Actor. Come on up here, get your award. Everyone applauds, and you walk off the stage. This person won Best Actress. Come on up here, get your award. I mean, I suppose you could make it really short, but no actors want to do that, because why would they want to just have 5 seconds of notoriety where they get applause? They want to milk it. So, I mean, I guess, but by nature, award shows are pretty slow. You take your time. So now it's not that interesting. And then, like I said, there's been this kick for a long time of trying to be relevant and trying to make history, which is why now they pretty much shot themselves in the head. I think the Oscars are unwatchable. They keep tinkering with it and trying to make history, and the Oscars are absolutely rigged. I mean, they absolutely are. There's no way, because they make history all the time. Like every year, they make history, and it's always with something that no one's ever heard of. Like, who would vote for that? The all of a sudden this trans woman will win Best Actress. And like, it's a historical first. A trans woman won. She made, it was part of a movie that nobody's heard of. It was like a limited release movie that was about some trans woman who's suffering from, and I'm just making this up. This didn't happen, but some trans woman who's suffering from prejudice that appeared in a few movie houses, independent movie houses over in California or something, and she wins, or he wins, or whatever. And it's like, and then they all talk about how historic the Oscars are. The first trans woman ever to win an Oscar for Best Female Actress. Like, nobody's ever heard of that. Why would she win Best Actress? There are a lot of actresses who did a good job in movies. And that's what I mean. Like, and over the years, I've seen it more and more where, there'll be somebody who really isn't a very good actress or actor, but, they have Down syndrome, and they were the first Down syndrome male to lead a film, and he wins. Or you'll get, I don't know, some little girl. I remember one year, which is it's very unusual for kids to even be nominated, and for reasons that we won't get into right now. But there's a reason why they don't normally nominate kids. But this girl got nominated, where a little black girl, where she had played a girl who escaped slavery, and and all this other stuff, and so she won Best Actress or supporting, either Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress. And I remember thinking, she's a little girl, she's not that talented, but you gave her the award as almost like a white guilt offering. Like, well, we just feel so bad for your people in the movie that you made. Your character was really mistreated, and we want to show you that we love you anyway. A few years ago, that girl from Precious, can't even pronounce her name, big heavy girl, who this was her first role, and she just played I know this sounds rude, but she played a fat girl who was just kind of a black fat girl who nobody really gave much attention to. And I remember she won Best Actress. And I remember reading about that and thinking, why on earth would she win Best Actress? This is her first movie role, and it wasn't that good. The movie wasn't very good. She didn't really do any acting. She did most of her lines like this. She didn't really show. She did most of her lines in monotone, hardly opened her mouth. and she was stiff as a board, but I guess they thought if they didn't give it to her, they would be accused of racism or shapeism. She's a black female, fat black female woman. And she, and so if they didn't nominate her, then somehow they're saying it's okay to be rude to fat black women. I don't know, but anyway, they just keep giving these awards every year. It's always historic because this person won, that person won. It's the first time, an Asian American slash American Indian woman won. I mean, it's always some weird. They always find some tie, to make it historical. And they're all people that almost all are people I've never heard of, that I've never seen them in any pictures. It's always very political. Like, during the Trump years, a movie would come out, about Mexicans, struggling on the border or crossing the border, and suddenly that would win Best Picture. Like, are you kidding me? That's a coincidence? Obviously you're doing that to send a political message. You know, um, this wasn't just a random, oh, well, we have some movies here and we're going to pick one and we all think this is the best. No, it was like you guys got together and conspired and said, we want to make sure we send a message to Trump and the Republicans that we support these immigrants who are coming over the border or whatever. And now they've just released some new information saying that now a movie won't even be considered for an Oscar unless it reaches a certain threshold. And they list it. It's got to have so many black people working on the film, so many women working on the film. It's got to have so much. I don't know. They had a whole list of these. So much of the cast has to be mixed race. So much of the production has to be mixed race. You can't do like a movie like 12 Angry Men, where all the main characters are men. You've got to have variety in the movie, or won't even be considered for an Oscar. They have all these rules now. Basically, which only opens the door to token people. Well, a lot of people, if they are indeed racist, as if all these white people are racist as they are claiming, then all you're going to end up doing is having white people just hire a token black person or a token gay person. They don't give them any responsibility. They don't really do anything with them. But we got our quota. We have black people, even though all the white people are the ones doing all the work and all the white people are the ones who are respected. The black people are just told to sit down and shut up and don't say anything. But if you come over and look, we have a black person, like how does that help anything? Unless, by forcing these alleged racist white people to hire more blacks and more women isn't going to make a difference, because like I said, they're just going to hire token characters, just people so they can check off that list and say, okay, we have 3 women working on our set. Perfect. They get us coffee, they run errands for us. I might, if I'm a director, I might get some hot young woman, that can share my bedroom, but they're all on the payroll. They don't do anything really, but but they're on the payroll. So, that's the kind of thing that I don't see what you accomplish by having a quota system and telling people you have to hire X number of this. But also, I don't see how you can be creative and make a film. Like if you're a painter, I mean, I'm talking about works of art. I know that not all movies are works of art. In fact, very few of them are, but it is an art form. And in my opinion, it should be treated like that. If I was a movie maker, I would try to make art, not just make a quick buck. But so we'll just put it in the terms of art. If, of creative arts, if I was a painter and somebody came to me and I told them I wanted to paint a picture of, the French Riviera, on a Sunday afternoon. And they told me, well, here are the colors you can use. You have to use black and brown and green. And, you have to have some purple. But, those are the only colors that you're allowed to use. They're stifling my creativity. How am I supposed to make what I see or what I envision if you're going to just give me the colors I can use? Or tell me, yeah, you can do that painting, but you have to do it over here from this perspective. You can't use that. Well, that's the perspective I really want. That's what I want to capture. No, you can't do that. You're going to have to take a pic. You're going to have to paint a picture um, over here. It stifles the creative mind, and that's what I'm saying here. That if I was a filmmaker and I'm told that I can only make pictures that have that have at least half of the cast has to be women, half, a certain percentage has to be black or brown or, some kind of minority, and you have to have at least one trans or gay character in there. How am I supposed to make my art if I have someone over my shoulder telling me you have to do this, you have to add that, you have to add that? Like, but I don't. That's not the picture. Like, you know, and I'm not even talking about racism. I mean, you're just telling a story. Like, if I want to tell a story about a small town in Kansas, in the 1920s, well, the thing is, it's going to be predominantly white people, because that's not that I want to make a story about white people, but if I want to capture a particular story, something that happened, a historical event or a historical drama, if I want to make it realistic, there's not going to be a lot of minorities in 1920s Kansas. And the women in the 1920s are not going to be like the women of 2022. They're going to be very different. They're not going to play as much of a role in a lot of things. I mean, what I mean is, I would have to compromise my art in order to try to fit in these things, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a form of censorship, and we got away from the studio system years ago because people felt that it was bad for art. Well, back in the studio system, or the sponsor system, I should say, that was a big problem. You hear that a lot from old writers and people, and television shows in the 50s and 60s, because they weren't allowed to do a lot of things because of standards and practices from the studio and then the sponsor. So they said it was very difficult to come up with scripts, because you'd have a script, but they'd have to go over it and be like, well, you can't say that. You can't do this. You can't show that. So it was very difficult sometimes to write scripts. Not so much if you were doing a show like I Love Lucy, but if you were doing a show, where it's much more dramatic, about lawyers or something, because lawyers deal with cases that might deal with rape or murder or, and they would have had very, well, no, we don't, you can't say rape on TV. You can't say that she was raped, so, so then you have to rewrite the entire script, so that how do you work that in there? She was assaulted, I mean, it doesn't really have the same ring to it, and stuff like that. They said it's very difficult because you always had someone over your shoulder telling you can't say that, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I said it was just difficult, and that's what I'm saying here. It's the same thing. If you're making movies and you have someone over your shoulder saying you have to hire so many black people and all that, then it just becomes difficult. Anyway, I'm getting off that because I didn't even really want to talk too much about the Oscars. I will talk about the governor's race is not heating up yet. Whitmer just announced last week that she's going to run for re-election. Of course, we all knew she was going to, but she just announced. So that is, but there's not really much going on the Republican side of the governor's race right now, so there's not a whole lot to say. Joe Biden, of course, our illustrious leader, has once again gone to opening his mouth and saying something wrong, and he said that we need regime change in Russia. And he said this man cannot remain in power. Well, it has not only sent outrage around the world among world leaders, but even right here in the United States, where the Secretary of State has been saying that we have no plans to remove Putin from office. We're not planning to invade Russia. And then Biden comes out and contradicts him and says that we need to remove Putin. Well, Jen Psaki, the press secretary, came out immediately and was like, no. Biden doesn't speak for the administration. Like, okay, now I'm concerned. Biden doesn't speak for the administration. He is the administration. It's his administration. How does he not speak for the administration? Who is running the country is the question I have. Because if the president says something and then is told, we're told that that is not true, and he doesn't speak for the administration, then who speaks for the administration? Who's in charge? I'm very, very concerned about that because he does this all the time. We've heard him over and over again say that, they gave me a list who to call on. He said the other day that he couldn't go into, that he would love to go visit Ukraine and because he loves the Ukrainian people and they're so brave, but they won't allow me to because it's too dangerous. Who is they that won't allow him to? And this was not, however he worded it, it was not meaning they, meaning the Ukrainians won't allow him to come into their country. This was a distinct, they won't allow me to, meaning somebody in the White House will not allow me to go to Ukraine because it's a war zone. Number one, my argument with that is, number one, all of Ukraine is not a war zone. There are certain sections in the eastern part of Ukraine, but in the western part of Ukraine, the Russians are not invading. So he could easily go to if he wanted to go to Ukraine, he could easily go to the western side of Ukraine where there is no fighting. If he really had a desire to go meet with the Ukrainian people, he could easily do that. And there's no reason why President Zelensky couldn't meet him over there if he wants to congratulate Zelensky and get a photo op. There's no reason why he couldn't do it. That's number one. Because all of Ukraine is not a war zone. Number two, it bothers me again, and I think I might have talked about this a few weeks ago. Maybe I talked about this entire subject. I very well could have. I apologize if I did. I mean, you probably don't want to hear it. You probably didn't want to hear it the first time. You certainly don't want to hear it again. But other presidents have visited war zone. Johnson and Nixon went to Vietnam when it was a war zone. George W. Bush went to Afghanistan and Iraq. He would just show up for Thanksgiving, and he would just go and he'd walk around and he'd visit the troops. And even Bill Clinton, for goodness sake, went to Bosnia during that little skirmish we were having in Bosnia. In fact, Hillary Clinton has gone. Betty Ford. We've had our first ladies weren't afraid. Some of our first ladies weren't afraid to go to countries that were in a war zone. And yet our president is too scared, to go to a country that's not even a complete war zone, where there are many places where there's peace he could go if he wanted to visit, but claims he's too scared because, well, he didn't say he's scared, but that's all I could take from it, because if he's the president of the United States, all he has to say is, I'm going, and they will make arrangements. I mean, that's all. The president has the unique power of one of the few people in the world who can just make a decision on stuff like that. Now, he can't have people arrested and can't, all that kind of stuff. But the president of the United States can say, this is going to happen. I am going to the war zone. He might have aides who tell him, I don't think that's the wisest idea. I don't think you should do this. They might try to talk him out of it. But if he says, I'm going to go, get my plane ready, they will do it. They're not, presidents today are pretty cowardly, in my opinion. Older presidents didn't have a problem going to where there is some sense of danger. And not just presidents, even presidential candidates. I mean, they would go to places where they knew they wouldn't be welcome. Robert F. Kennedy, although he was never a president, Robert F. Kennedy was in Indianapolis when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And he talked to them. Everyone warned him that there would probably be riots. And he went and spoke to a black audience. And there was real fear by the Secret Service and other people that he would be killed. There would be riots that would break out, and they would kill white people in retaliation for Martin Luther King Jr. being killed. And Robert Kennedy said, no, I have to speak to them. I have to speak to them. I can't. I'm not going to hide and cower in my hotel room out of fear. I have to speak to them. And he gave an eloquent, beautiful speech to them, and it was emotional. And that was the only black city, predominantly black city in America, that did not break out into riots. The only one was where Robert Kennedy came out and he talked to them directly, while the politicians in those other cities ran and hid because all those black people are going to be dangerous. You know, you had Teddy Roosevelt, who gave a speech and was shot in the chest and basically said, "Oh my, I got shot. Anyway, let me continue my speech here, and then I'll go to the hospital." You know, I mean, over and over, like I said, I'm no big fans of Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon, but they went to Vietnam during the war. They went there. Eisenhower went to Korea during the war. He wanted to get see what was going on in Korea. So after he got elected, he said, "I'm going to Korea," and he went. It was a war zone. Um, you know, I mean, there's just numerous instances of presidents who were not afraid. You know, Ronald Reagan stood right there in Berlin, in front of the Berlin Wall, and was warned by all of his aides and his Secretary of State and everybody, telling him, "Do not inflame tensions here. Do not. If you say anything against Russia, you are likely to get killed here." And Reagan said, "I am not going to cow down to the Russians." And he stood right there and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And it was brave, and he was warned, but he did it anyway because he said it needed to be said. And it needed to be said here because me sitting, safely behind the gates of the White House and making comments like that don't mean anything. But I'm willing to put my life on the line because I believe this is ridiculous. And it did have impact. It had huge impact. And you know what? The Berlin Wall came down within 3 years after he made that statement. The Berlin Wall, that began, from what we understand, that was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. When Ronald Reagan called out the Soviet Union right there in Berlin, it became hard for them to have control over the whole eastern side of Germany. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Germany after World War II was divided in two. You had East Germany and West Germany. East Germany was controlled by the Russians, and West Germany was free. So, and they built that wall between the two so that you couldn't cross over the sides. After that, they lost their grip. The Soviet Union started to collapse. These were all people who were not afraid. But then you have, Mr. Coward, who won't even get anywhere near a war zone. "Oh no, there's fighting there. Oh no, I can't go over there. Oh, can you imagine that? Oh, I have to wipe my forehead. I'm already sweating so badly just thinking about going over there. Oh my goodness." I mean, he's just so cowardly. And he's not any better than Obama. Obama too was pretty cowardly. He wouldn't go into a war zone. In fact, he wouldn't stand up to Putin. It was really kind of funny because there was at one point when Obama went over there for some G7 summit or something over to Europe. Everyone kept asking if he was going to confront Putin about something. I can't remember what was going on that they were going to confront Putin. And Obama said, "Well, if I get a chance, I'm going to tell Putin exactly what I think of what he did." And Putin trolled him beautifully. And now I don't want to I'm not like Trump. I'm not saying I admire Putin. I'm not saying anything like that, but I'm just saying it was masterful in the way he did this. It doesn't mean I approve of him, but it was masterful. I mean, and that is that Putin followed Obama. Obama went to London. Putin showed up in London, and then suddenly Obama remembered he had an engagement in Prague. And so they said he left London. I'm saying Prague. I don't remember where he went, but I'm just using these countries as an example. Then the next day, Obama went to Prague, and everyone asked him, "Well, why didn't you confront Putin?" "Oh, well, I had this engagement I had to get to, but I would have, if I had had a chance, I would have talked to Putin, and I would have told him to his face this." And so then Putin arrived in Prague, and then all of a sudden, Obama's off to Ireland for something. I mean, it was like that, like 4 or 5 places that Obama went, and then Putin would show up there, and then Obama would leave the next morning before he'd have to be confronted by Putin. And all along him saying, "I'm not afraid of Putin. The United States is not afraid of Putin." But then every time Putin showed up, Obama would leave the next day. And to me, it looked as if, and maybe it was all legitimate, maybe it was just a coincidence, but it sure looked to me like Obama was afraid of a confrontation with Putin. And so Putin would show up and he'd leave immediately, so he didn't have an excuse to have to run into him, and then embarrass himself by trying to act tough to Putin. So again, I'm no fan of Putin, but I'm just saying Obama showed cowardice, as is Biden. I mean, to me, the contrast is just so big. The president of Ukraine is on the streets fighting for his country. The Russians put out a bounty and sent mercenaries to kill him, and he's still out there and says, "I am not leaving my countrymen. I'm going to stand out here and defend it." And then you have Biden, who's not asked to go right in the middle of the war zone, not asked to grab a gun and defend Ukraine, but just says, "Are you going to go to Ukraine to talk to some of the people and encourage them?" "Oh, I can't go. It's too dangerous. It's a war zone. They won't let me go. What are you talking about? Just tell them I'm going. It's like, I don't know. It's just ridiculous because, the Secret Service cannot override the president. Even the Secret Service can't. It's always amazed me. I've heard Obama say it. I've heard. I think Trump said it a few times. I've heard Biden say it, that they wanted to do something, but the Secret Service wouldn't let them. I'm like, no. The Secret Service might have told you it's not a good idea. They might have advised against it. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. If you want to do it, they'll make sure you get to go. I mean, they'll make sure you're safe. It might be more work for them. They might not like it, but they'll do it. If you say you're going to go somewhere, okay, we'll make arrangements. That's all you have to say. I'm doing it. But instead, they don't want to do it, and then they blame the Secret Service. Well, the Secret Service said I couldn't do it. The Secret Service is not the president of the United States. You are the president. You are their boss. I just don't get it. They always claim that they can't do these things. But anyway, I'm about done. I will talk to you all next week, and hope you all have a great week. Bye, everyone.
I should turn off autoplay before I do that. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us for the Coop Scoop here on the Holmes Politicast. I'll be back. Well, Jim will probably be back on Wednesday. And if he is, I'll stream his show. If not, I'll see you guys on Friday.